I have a list of things that I have to apologize for here, and I don't want to. Let me make that very clear. But Eddie is making me my editor because we really got into it yesterday over a bunch of stuff, and I'll talk about it later. But first, let me just get through this. Okay, I am sorry for saying all Uber drivers are murderers. Sorry. I am sorry for saying that service workers are not human beings. Okay, that's not exactly what I said. I said that service workers are doing a service, and they should be treated as a service rather than a person while they're doing the service. But I'm sorry. I am sorry for saying that leaving a parked car with the keys in the ignition so an unhoused person steals it and drives off a cliff would be doing a service to society. Okay, I did say that. In general, I apologize for my recent comments about people who happen to be unhoused. For a reason. No, all right, Eddie, cut that out. Also, oh my God. So I straight up asked Eddie, because we were arguing yesterday about almost everything about my career and everything that we're both doing and everything that has been going on. And I said, why do you never edit out the things that I explicitly tell you to edit out? And he said, because it's funny. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, people love it. People love that Eddie doesn't do anything. So I said, what am I paying you for then? And he said, you're paying me for the insight that it would be funnier if I didn't do my job. Fucking moron. All right. I apologize for saying that homeless people are all junky crackheads who have AIDS. That really doesn't sound like something that I would say. I really don't think that I said that. There's no way that I said that all homeless people are junky crackheads who had AIDS. I certainly didn't say it with that exact verbiage. I am sorry for saying that people with anorexia are useless sticks. I will admit that when you see it written out on a piece of paper, it does take on a different tone. And so I apologize. I'm sorry for we're almost done here. This is just the second to last one. I'm sorry for the problematic gender politics that were implied by my anecdote about Bugs Bunny. And I'm sorry for my comments about the Armenian genocide. Oh, we never published that one. So we're good. We don't have to worry about that one. All right. So Eddie and I got in a really big argument yesterday. He called me very, 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 very upset as soon as I published the video yesterday, because he said, what in God's name is this thumbnail? And I said, I don't know. It's just, it's funny. It's just, I don't know. It's eye-catching, And he said, Dan, what are you doing? And I said, I am doing what I was put here on earth to do, which is entertain people. And he said, I agree. But Dan, Eddie's been kind of on this whole kick about trying to get me into the mainstream, because he says that I am talented, right? But yesterday he was like, it just makes me so sad to see you squandering your talent on weird crap. And I said, excuse me, this is my art. This is what I want to create in my heart of hearts, and people love it. Clearly I'm doing something right. And he said, yes, but Dan, you don't understand. We did a focus group, one of those focus test group things. And supposedly, whenever people show normal people, normal, well-adjusted people who have lives and jobs and kids and relationships and friends and all that stuff, supposedly my content comes off to them as very off-putting and disturbing and upsetting. you know. And I've heard that anecdotally, that when people show normal people my work, it's very upsetting for them, and causes a lot of strain on their relationship, you know. And I said, well, if they don't get it, you know, if they just don't get it, that's their loss, you know. And he said, Dan, it's just, you have to understand this. You took 4 months to work on some weird, esoteric, bullshit short film that nobody understands and doesn't make any sense. And I said, that's not what you said when it was finished. When it was finished, you said it was great. And you said I was a visionary. And you said that I was going to be the next Stanley Kubrick. And he said, yes, I did say that. But you have to understand that this is a trade-off type of thing. You know, when you made the fact that I allowed you to take 4 months off to make that short film, I did so with the understanding that it was going to get it out of your system so that you could go back to doing what people actually like, and you could go back to making content that is going to get cash flowing into our business again, you know. And instead, you're going out here and you're saying extremely alienating things about homeless people. You're saying extremely offensive things about almost every subgroup on the face of the planet. You keep shaving your eyebrows, and we agreed that we were going to let your eyebrows grow out. We agreed you were going to grow your hair out. We agreed that you were going to stop yelling. We agreed that you were going to be palatable. And I said, Eddie, I don't understand what you want me to do, because in my head, all of this stuff is funny. You know, in my head, all of this stuff is good and it makes sense. And I'll be honest, it relaxes me. You know, when I watch it, when I watch it back, I'm having a great time. And I say, this is great stuff, you know? And he said, well, normal people don't feel that way. And I said, well, then how do you explain all the times that I have crossed over, you know, into the mainstream? Like, take that video about the car insurance, you know? And he said, well, that kind of stuff seems to be more of an outlier than a norm. And I will admit, it started to kind of hurt my feelings. And I was like, Eddie, why are you being so mean to me? I don't understand. And he said, because it's frustrating. You could be Jim Carrey levels right now, and instead you're getting in your own way because you would rather make a baby head on a loaf of bread than something that is palatable for mainstream American audiences. And I said, Sun Loaf was a hit. That was not my fault. That is because normal people are not ready to accept something. You know what? I bet that in 5 years from now, Sun Loaf is going to be a beloved American iconic piece of iconography. There's going to be a statue of Sun Loaf in the subway, the New York subway station, not the subway, the chain, which I don't support. Subway's very bad. And it's just one of these things where it's like, yeah, well, I have been doing everything that he asks. You know, I have been trying to make more content since I published the short film. I've been trying to make everybody happy. I've been trying to do what everybody else wants. But it's never good enough for anybody. And my point the whole time was like, you are utilizing an outdated model of entertainment. You know, when Jim Carrey was doing his thing back in the 90s, you know, there was no internet. There was only one streamlined monoculture, which means that the same movies, the same TV shows, you know, everybody had access to the same entertainment. And so it made sense that everything had to have all of its edges rounded off so that it would be palatable to everybody, because that was the way that our culture worked. But now that it doesn't work that way anymore. Now it's so splintered and fragmented. Everybody can pursue their own niche. And so why would in my head, it doesn't make any sense for me to try to make sanitized bullshit that appeals to everybody. You know, if we live in a world where that's not even necessary anymore, you know, because I think it's more important to make something that is, you know, has a strong and unique voice and perspective. So that was what I was trying to tell Eddie the other day. And he was like, well, Dan, you know, that's great, but just know that if that's what you want to do, then you're going to be sitting in your car behind the dumpster for the rest of your life. If that's what you want to do, if this is the work that you want to make, if this crap, this thumbnail for yesterday's video is the kind of shit that you want to put out into the world, then I hope you're happy with consistently being under 100K views, with only rare exceptions where you happen to accidentally make something that resonates with the general populace. I hope you're okay with that. And I said, Eddie, do I need to remind you of the... All right, this is just... It's just these people, these money people, these business people, they don't understand. They don't understand what the function of art is supposed to be. So anyway, I'm so sick of talking about this fucking crap. I don't apologize for any of this because in context, it was earned, okay? I will admit, you know, when I went back and reviewed some of the videos, the anti-homeless sentiment was a little excessive. I will admit that. I will admit that sometimes in the heat of the moment, I will react strongly. I get that. I accept it. And I am trying, you know, I mean, I would love for the whole family to be able to get down, you know, and watch Dan Henschel's newest video and all chuckle and laugh, you know, but I just think that also I need to be true to myself, you know? So anyway, I apologize for everything that I've ever said. I apologize for being a huge piece of shit. I apologize for being an idiot that nobody likes. I apologize for everything that I say being wrong. And here's the other thing. I don't want to get, you know, I can't be getting into this dog on a leash relationship with the audience. You know, honestly, I think it would be a better strategy to just pretend that they're not there, you know? And he said, that's not how it works, Dan, in this community-oriented content epoch. You have to have a relationship with your audience. Anyway, God damn it, you know, I would love, you know what? Well, I would love to have been born in the 70s. You know, I would love to have been born in an era where I could have just taken Sunloaf up to the, you know, Tower Records or wherever the hell it is, slapped him on the table, and then everybody in the building would have applauded and given me $100 million to make a feature film. But instead, you know, I've got to spin around on the sidewalk, sucking my own cock. All right, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. And I said I wasn't going to scream anymore. Oh, Christ. Okay. So what even is this video supposed to be about? I don't know. Oh, yeah, okay. So sorry, I'm kind of off my game today because I didn't get any fucking sleep last night at all. I had that huge argument with Eddie, and then I had to drive all the way out to Malibu because I was supposed to have a dinner with the Lefos tonight, or last night. If you're not familiar, I have a friend, Pierre Lefo, you know, whose parents, they're French. And if you remember, there was some drama with the short film that I made, Sister, a short film by Daniel Henschel, available on YouTube now. You know, where there was a misunderstanding with credit. You know, I think that he sort of was under a different impression than I was while we were working on it. And then when it ultimately came out, I think that he just felt a little jealous. You know, I think he felt a little bit, he was just insecure about the fact that it was mostly me who was the genius behind it. And he was sort of just, I mean, it sucks, you know, it sucks when you're not the guy, you know, it sucks when your best friend is the guy and you're not, but that's not my problem, you know, I can't worry about that kind of stuff. They're just, those people, you know, it's like I'm waving at these people on my way up into the stratosphere. I'm like, see you later, you know, bye-bye. Sorry, there's not enough room on here. But you know, at the same time, Eddie is right. I would never let him know that. I would never admit that to him. But Eddie is correct. That you need money to be able to make art. You know? And so I mean, honestly, I agree with everything he said. I think that he's right, you know, to a certain extent. I think, but in his mind, he's all about the business side of things, and I'm sort of thinking like, this can be a negotiation. You know, you can do a one for them and a one for you. You know, you can do a sister short film, and then you can do a cocky one, boing boing, and then the ecosystem is all happy. You know, but Eddie just also is sort of, I think that he's on steroids or something, because he's always upset. It's just like, Jesus Christ, man, calm down. You're gonna have a heart attack by the time you're 50 years old, which is coming up pretty soon, because Eddie's 28. So anyway, I didn't get any sleep last night because I was at the Lefo house, and Malibu, you know, they live in Malibu, and they have this because they're rich, you know. They're from rural France initially, but they moved out to Los Angeles for some reason. His parents they do something very mysterious for work. I've always joked that they are in the French mafia, which apparently is, now I don't want to step on anybody's toes here. I don't want to say the wrong thing. If I do, we'll put it on tomorrow's apology, you know, newsletter. But I was hearing from some people that the proper term for the French mafia is the Corsican mafia. So if that's the case, there you go. There's the accurate term. But obviously, you know, for legal reasons, that's just a joke. I don't know if that's actually what they do. You know, and it's just the kind of thing where, you know, I mean, you can't just go into somebody's house and then be like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you afford all this? Because that's just not polite, you know. So they live out in Malibu on this house that's, you know, right on the ocean. You know, it's kind of on this promontory, and you can hear at night when you're laying in bed, the fucking ocean sound is so annoying because you just hear these waves crashing over and over. And it sounds like nails on a chalkboard to me. So I couldn't sleep at all because my bedroom was facing the ocean, and the doors, you know, you could close the doors kind of, but you could still hear the noise from outside. So I tried everything. I tried earplugs, you know, I tried, Monsieur Lefo gave me some very strange pill, and nothing else. So I'm very, very tired and irritable. But I continue working anyway because that's what you have to do in America. You know, I was over there because I'm trying to get financing for a feature film in the future, and since they're rich, you know, I'm trying to kind of, I don't like going over there very much. I don't really like Pierre very much. I don't like their family. I think that having dinner with them is weird, but it's just it's one of those things. It's like, you got to stay on the payroll. You know, you got to keep making appearances, and you got to act like a nice person so that Pierre's dad will give me money to make my feature film. And then I won't need money from Pierre's family anymore. Hopefully, you know. That's not coming anytime soon. That's down the line. But, you know, with these things, you got to start planning them out in advance. So I went over there, and this is the first time that I've actually seen him and his family since we're not gay, by the way. Can I just make that clear? I keep reading responses to his tweets, and for some reason everybody thinks that we're gay lovers, which we are not. We are partners, business partners, not romantic partners in any fashion, you know. So this is the first time that I've seen all of them since that sort of incident when we ultimately decided. It kind of blew up in his face, to be honest. I don't think that is exactly the reaction that he was expecting, you know, because it got millions and millions of views. And it ended up sort of just getting me more marketing for the film, because you can go now on the line graph of views, and right when he made his false accusations, the spike goes bink right up. So we ultimately decided that the best way to fix the situation and retain both of our reputations would be if I went on his account and pretended that it had been me the whole time, and I made a selfie and I said it's actually been me this entire time, blah blah blah, which was a lie. But normal people, the normal people are so stupid. That's ultimately the thing with, that's ultimately the reason why I can't relate to them. That's kind of the reason why I can't make content for them, because what would I say? I mean, I'm not that stupid, and I can't pretend to be stupid. That's not a skill that I have. So it's just not like Eddie was telling me to try to start making more relatable content, and I said, would you have any suggestions? And he said, well, there's a very popular format that's like, your one friend who blank. So it's like your one friend who fucked your cousin's dad or something, or your one friend who can suck his own cock, and then the person is doing a skit where they're like, oh, I'm the friend who can, I'm that one friend who's, I don't know. I don't even know what they do, because it feels totally alien to me. When I watch all the examples that Eddie was showing me, I was like, I feel like I am a Martian who just landed on the planet Earth, and this is the first video that I have seen. I have no basis of comparison for anything that anybody is saying in this video, and I can't fabricate that. I can't just make up stuff. I can't just be like, yeah, you're one friend who's doing. So he said, well, what if I give you a list of topics and you can maybe try some of those out? So, we could do that one friend who always wants to be the center of attention. We could do that one friend who I don't know. I forget all of his milquetoast examples because they're... Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't mean to talk so much about Eddie. It's just that he's really been on my mind because he's getting my fucking nerves. Anyway, I went over to the Lefo house, and I usually spend the night there whenever I go over, because it's all the way out in Malibu, and it's driving back to LA from out there is just a nightmare. So I'll go over there for dinner, and rush hour traffic isn't too much of a problem going out there. So then I'll just stay the night and come back early the next morning around 3 o'clock in the morning, because I get up very early. So I got there, and it was a little awkward because, like I said, I hadn't seen them since any of this went down. And I certainly hadn't told them any of my situation that I've been dealing with since Turkey Day, And I wasn't even going to bring it up. It's just that when you have something that's kind of, bubbling up inside of you, it's hard to keep it in there. It's hard to, I don't know. I really think that things are going to come out whether you want them to or not. So, Mrs. Lefo, what's the version? What's the Madame Lefo, was working on dinner. Monsieur was reading the paper, and me and Pierre were playing Xbox. Monsieur said, so Dan, and he said it in French. He was like, "Si, monsieur," I don't know. I can't do accents. That's the other thing. Eddie was showing me all these videos of like, Will Ferrell, all these SNL guys, and he was like, Bill Hader, and he said, why can't you do this stuff? And I said, because I can't do an impression of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I can't do any of this. I don't have the usual bag of tricks that all these guys have. I'm sorry. Sorry, I suck. Sorry. No, I said I wasn't going to do that. And he said, well, could you practice maybe? And so I've been trying to maybe do an Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've been like, we get to the chopper. See, I can't do it. George Bush. Hi, I'm the president, and I'm stupid. It's just something's wrong with me. Something's broken inside of me that makes it so that I cannot be a mainstream comedian. I have to be an alt comedian. So I'm sorry. Anyway, here's house. Madame Lefo's cooking dinner. We're playing Xbox, me and Peter. And all of a sudden we hear coming from outside. Remember, their house is on the beach. Monsieur, it's like he doesn't even need to look at what's happening. He can just hear and he knows instantly. And he puts his paper down like this, like whoosh. And he immediately gets up out of his chair and he storms over to the bedroom. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I look outside and I see that there's a family with a beach blanket and an umbrella, and a couple of beach chairs and a picnic basket, and they're sitting out by the beach because it was a very nice day yesterday. And it's probably the last beach day that we're going to get out here for the foreseeable future once this winter hits. Of course, I said that last month, and then now I got to bring my AC back out because it's been in the 80s, But you never know. You never know when it's going to be your last chance to get out there for a while. So it was a very busy day yesterday at Malibu once school let out, And here's the thing about California. There's this thing called the California Coastal Commission, which is a government entity that is designed to protect California's coastline. So they're very, very strict about what you can and cannot do with relation to if you have property on California's coastline. The biggest thing is that in California, all beach, the entire coastline is public property. There's no such thing as a private beach in California. Most people don't know that because the beach is only public. It's something that's like where the sand gets wet is public, but private property, it's like, there may not be, the beach access might be private, but the beach itself is public no matter what. But in the end of the day, that kind of becomes a moot point, because if, the people who have these properties who border the beach, they just sort of restrict the access. And they make it so the only way that you could even get on the beach is by boat. It's not like, and you would be trespassing to try to walk around their house to get onto the beach anyway. So also they will, if you're ever on a beach in California and the homeowner comes out of the big house and says, you have to get out, that's my property, you got to get out of here, you can say, no, I don't, because of the California Coastal Commission. So thank you, California Coastal Commission. The downside is that if you want to do any repairs on your house or something, or any, if you have beachfront property, then you have to go through this whole rigmarole of red tape. You got to, if you want to make a dock extension, you've got to submit paperwork to the California Coastal Commission, and then you got to go to a hearing that they have once a month or whatever it is, and then you got to wait for them to decide if you can have your dock extension or not, and all that stuff. But I think ultimately, it's one of those things where it's like the government. Sometimes when the government, in theory, works, when they do their job right, I think it's ultimately a net good for society, So anyway, obviously, Pierre's family is not exactly liberal, and they are not exactly students of Karl Marx. So I was seeing the family down there sort of hanging out on the beach with their kids and everything. Monsieur comes back out of his bedroom with a big shotgun. And he cocks it like this. And Madame Lefo is going, no, senor, or whatever it is in French. No, monsieur, calm down, calm down. And he went, get away from me, in French. Points the shotgun down to the beach and goes, blam! And I see a big sand, because the shotgun, whatever you call it, hit the sand right next to the family, and the sand went, and then of course the family goes, ah, and he says in French, hasta la vista or something. He says goodbye, get off my property. and they were saying, and so the family was mostly screaming, but then one of the guys who was there was like, actually, because of the California Coastal Commission, we're allowed to be here, and Monsieur Cox is going to go right next to his head. So he's pretty good with the aim in that thing, you know. And then there was a whole cascade of water behind them. The family runs off, you know, scared. And Monsieur puts the shotgun back in the closet, wherever it is, sits back down, opens his paper again. So I was just like, whoa, you know. And I would be, you know, Pierre and Madame were just sort of like this is just another day, you know. And I sort of whispered to Pierre, I was like, you know, they are right. The California Coastal Commission gives us, and Pierre was like, shh, no, don't even start with all that, or he's gonna shoot your head off. So we go outside for dinner, some alfresco dining, you know, and Monsieur's sort of picking up the shells and the gunpowder and everything that were residuals on the beach. And I hear this buzzing sound, you know, that's the sound that's kind of like zzz. And I'm like, sounds like there's a power line or something that's down. And Monsieur said something in French, and Pierre goes, "Oh no, that's the hornets." I was like, "Huh? Excuse me?" And he said, "Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, actually. So you were right about the California Coastal Commission. You know, technically, it is illegal and it's a violation. It's a code violation if we were to put public or private property signs restricting access to the beach, but." Sort of the way that we found a workaround to that was we started farming hornets. You know, I forget what they're called, giant Asian hornets or something. Supposedly their larva and their pupa, you know, is a delicacy that's really highly sought after and very expensive. So he's like, "You want to come see?" And I was like, "No, I'm afraid of hornets. I don't want to go over there." He's like, "No, it's fine. You just spray yourself with this oil, you know, hornet oil or whatever, and you go over there, and they're not going to bother you, you know." But what they do is, whenever somebody tries to go on the beach, the hornets will attack them. And it's sort of a natural phenomenon, you know. It's not like we're putting a sign up that says blah blah blah. So we're in total compliance with the law. And I was sort of thinking, I don't think that is accurate, but zip, you know. So he goes over there, and sure enough, there's a bunch of Asian giant hornets there, you know, which are very scary. They're very large. I mean, they're this big, you know, and this wide. And so this sort of raised a debate, a sort of philosophical debate within me, because I really don't consider myself much of a narc. But your Asian giant hornets, if you remember when the novel coronavirus was happening, those were the murder hornets, and it was a really big deal because you know, they sort of must have accidentally, you know, that they were establishing invasive populations in the Pacific Northwest. And so they had to do this. They had to go into emergency mode, all the ecological people, you know, to try to sort of stymie the you know, growth of they did not want the invasive Asian giant hornets. There's nothing wrong with being Asian, by the way. That's just the name that they are, you know. So I don't want people to I don't want to have to add another thing to the list, you know. That's just what they're called. So it was a big deal, and if the Asian giant hornets were to establish a permanent population in the United States, that would cause a total ecological disastrous collapse, you know, because they prey on honeybees and all this stuff. So I actually did last night send a complaint to the California Wildlife Commission, and I said, hey, I think I have it's an anonymous tip, which I probably shouldn't have just said, because now but Monsieur is not going to watch this far into a video. He doesn't even speak English, So I did, I did send an anonymous complaint to the California Ecological Bullshit Society, and I said, hey, listen, there's this, in Malibu, there's this population invasion giant hornets. Anyway, we were sitting down for dinner, and Monsieur asked me in French, so how have you been? And Pierre translated, and he said, he just asked you, how have you been? And I said, to be honest with you, I haven't been very good. I got in an argument with my editor about, trying to make my content more palatable for the mainstream audiences, and Pierre was like, no, I'm not translating that for him. Get to the point. So I said, and, I've been dealing with this situation. There's this guy, Big Red. And as soon as I say Big Red, even though Monsieur doesn't speak English, he drops his fork and stares at me. And I was like, what? What did I say? And he said, "Comment estás?" Or, whatever it is in French. Pardon. And I said, well, my editor, Eddie, and I were talking about making our content more palatable for the mainstream. And he was like, no, the next thing. Does it have to be so loud? People get very upset with me when I bring this up, but I just feel like they could be a little quieter. I'm not saying that we have to get rid of ambulances. I'm not saying that we have to get rid of fire trucks. I'm just saying, why don't we turn it down a notch? Why don't we just turn it down -1? Can we just try? I feel like they are too loud, and because everybody is sort of walking on eggshells regarding emergency services, nobody wants to be the one to say, excuse me, I think they're a little loud. But I'm going to say it. And comment if you agree. They're a little bit teeny weensy, little bit too loud. It's very disruptive. And it hurts my ears. The decibel level that an ambulance is, when it drives by, if you are exposed to decibel levels that high on a regular basis, you're going to go deaf. And so here's the thing, ambulance people. If you keep abusing your power like this, then all of a sudden nobody's going to even be able to hear your stupid siren in the first place. Anyway. So Monsieur Lefo looks like he's just seen a ghost, and he's gone completely pale. And I was sort of looking at Pierre, like, what did I say? Did I say something? And Pierre was like, I don't know. And Monsieur was like, "Como está?" Or the escargot. He said something in French that was frantic. And Pierre said, "Dad, I don't understand." Also in French. And then all of a sudden, Monsieur got up. And he said, and he was speaking in French, and he ushered me, he grabbed me, and he walked me back into the house. And Pierre was following him, and Madame Lefo was following him. And they were all sort of like, "Monsieur, calm down, everything's fine." And Monsieur kept getting more and more and more upset. And he was like, I didn't even know he spoke English. But he said, "You little bald bitch, get the fuck out of my house." And he threw me out onto the street, right out onto Pacific Coast Highway, and I nearly got hit by a car that was going 50 miles an hour, because people speed down that road so fast, and we're kind of, it's that Malibu is very disconnected from the rest of Los Angeles, so I was kind of like, what the hell do I do? What did I even say? I don't understand what I said. So I sort of just sit on the curb for a little bit. Pierre comes back out of the house and he says, all right, come back in. And I said, well, is Monsieur going to beat me up? And he said, no, we gave him an injection. And I was like, can you give me one? Please? Because I really need it after the fucking week that I've had. And he said, just come in. So I did. And Pierre also now looks like he has just seen a ghost. And he sat me down on the couch. And he said, Dan, you are completely out of your depth in this situation. You have just stumbled into something that is far, far more powerful than anything you or I could ever hope to ever grasp. You cannot win this. If you continue down this path, you are going to get a bloodbath that dwarfs the worst atrocities in human history and makes them look like a lemonade stand. So I was like, jeepers creepers, that's intense. Is this about Big Red? And Peter was like, shh. Never say that name in this house. And I was like, can somebody explain to me what's going on? I don't understand what's the big deal? And he said, the less you know, the safer you are. Trust me. And I said, what does this have to do with your family? And he said, I cannot say anything else. You just have to trust me that not only will you have to promise me, not only will you drop this entire thing, but you are going to pay back Big Red plus a extra interest fee that is a show of good faith. And you are going to apologize to Big Red. You're going to apologize to the Big Lebowski. And you are going to work at the emergency vet as a dishwasher until Big Red decides that he is going to spare you. And I was like, fuck that. No way. There's no way I'm doing that shit. Who do you think I am? This clown, first of all, Pierre, you don't know a single shit about this situation. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. Go back and watch all my old videos and see what's been going on. I'm not going to take this line down. I don't care what you and your French fucker family think, about your 1930s Godfather-esque power structure that is designed to reinforce your masculinity because you have a small cock. Eddie also told me that I bring up dicks a lot. So that's something I got to work on. I don't care about your, that's what I was saying to him. I said, I don't care about your family and their weird stuff. So, butt out, respectfully. And he said, Dan, you're going to get yourself and all of us killed. Abandon this line of inquiry. And I said, I'll consider it. Good night. And I went to bed. Locked the door. And I heard Pierre and his mom talking to each other in hushed, dire tones outside of the door. And I don't speak French, but I was recording it and thinking that I can use an AI or something to translate. And it didn't do a very good job because it told me that they were talking about Hotel Transylvania, the movie, which I don't think was accurate. And then the one sentence that I did get from the translator was, Take care of him. Make it quick.